Hello, my name is David Morley, and I'd like to tell you about my new poetry collection from Carcanet, which is called Passion. Now, I'm out in one of my favourite nature reserves right now. In fact, this is one of the places where a lot of the poems came to me. I could talk to you about almost every tree along this path where particular images occurred to me, which I wrote down. But the main thing, particularly on a day like this, a spring day, when everything's coming back to life, is sound. You can hear it all around you right now. The jackdaws, the chiffchaffs, the blackbirds, the nuthatches. And I find with this book that all the poems began with sound. I was searching for that moment where nature and art blurs and shapes a meaning. A meaning in language, a meaning in lines, a meaning in the music of speech. Now, I wrote many of these pieces while walking, and walking for me is not just a passion. Walking for me is a way of writing. Walking is writing. It clears the senses, it sharpens your mind, gives you perpetually new good ideas. Now, I began this book as summer ended, unlike today where spring is beginning and the book is just going to press. Summer was ending, and I wrote the poems in quick succession, and it was a time in my life of both gifts and losses. I wrote this book, Passion, and I also wrote my first novel, and it was an immensely exciting time. But sadly, I also lost my mother in the same year. I didn't stop writing. I kept writing, not out of any defiance, not to escape, but to hold life steady in my hands. I always feel that my poems are always trying to hold life steady for a moment, clasp it even. And for me, writing allows you not to look at death face to face, but to look directly at life. And so the poems began to form. Now, one of the things they do in this woodland here is they capture birds using mist nets. And there's no cruelty in this. The mist nets are very soft, fine threaded apparatus. The birds are captured usually around dawn, and then ornithologists, usually from the British Trust for Ornithology, come out and they collect these birds, put them into little velvet baskets, and then they take them out and weigh them and collect data about their age, the wing pattern, the variety. And while they're doing this, they also ring the bird on the leg in order to identify it and to further study it. So a bird that's been ringed here in Warwickshire could be found a few months later at the very northern tip of Scandinavia. That tells you a lot about how that bird lives, survives, thrives. But these poems for me were like mist nets. They were capturing living things, in this case lines of poems, in the threads of the forms in which I was using to write. And I was clasping these birds, these words, as though they were living things with quick pulses, before, exploring them, listening to them, watching them, and then releasing them. Thinking about my mother and the memories I have, we spent a lot of time together when I was a teenager. She and I in a little house in Blackpool, and me first discovering my love for writing, for poetry, and for prose too, but also for ornithology and zoology and for the natural world. And passion kind of brings all that together, all those different passions, but also, if you like, the passion for memory as well. not for recollection or nostalgia, but for story and also for language. And indeed, again, just to be kind of on the side of life, the dimension of the present moment. But it's also, I think, why in Passion so many of the poems return to birds, to ornithology, and to what I'm doing now, which is field work. For me, field work is the crucible of my poetry. It's the place where observation of movement and sound take place, whether that's the natural world, where there's a susurration of trees or birds, or the susurration of language, or languages too. Either way, it's all a question, I think, of listening and watching, of observing, paying attention, and then hopefully transforming something into something afresh. As Larkin said of this season, to begin afresh, afresh, afresh. I do have some favourite poems in this book, but I like them all. But I particularly like a long sequence called Fado, which is written in a kind of anti-poetry, a kind of song form, from the point of view of 8 different Romany women living on the margins. I'm also kind of very taken with one of the poems called The Oath, which is an account of the visit I made with my wife-to-be to the Bodleian Library for the first time in order to read the vow as to not burning the books that lie within that august institution, and my asking to read it in Romany, my wife read it in Welsh, and my being forbidden to do so. It's quite an angry poem, but I also think it's quite a funny poem. It's a sonnet, slightly elongated. When I wrote it, I felt I was hitting a truth of life, and also, a memory that was inflected through joy too. And there were other poems in there too, many of which deal very particularly with nature, with memory, but not in any kind of a totally green tinged way, so much as a kind of an immediate and almost fragile fashion too, which I would probably say they were quite tender poems compared to my previous collection, which was called Fury and was published by Carcanet. This poem called Passion, for instance, that concludes the book, is very much a reaching out to the reader beyond the page, kind of probably to a reader beyond my lifespan too, actually. But these poems in Passion, for me, they arrived alive. They were bright with colour. They were insistent upon their own existence. They came out of walking in wonderful places like this. And as I said, the book was like a mist net for capturing birds, not to gather them, but to clasp them for an instant, and to help them live. And so, if I was to decide here and now, surrounded as I am by birds finding their new season, in this case, this book finding words for a new season, I would probably say that the one thing I really like about this book is that it's on the side of life. And given what the world is going through, the human world is going through right now, in terms of politics and geopolitical upheavals, given what the natural world is going through in terms of climate change, to have something that's on the side of life might at first seem naive, a kind of gesture at feeling, but it's not at all naive. I think there's possibly an innocence to it, but innocence is not naivety. For me, innocence is a way of seeing or feeling or speaking as if for the first time. I hope you enjoy it. I wish you were here to enjoy the spring weather with me. I'm going to continue my walk now and see what I can see with my binoculars and record and listen and keep watching. Thank you.